Welcome to AminAcademy.com, the history of Muslim world. Let us discuss about Crusade Wars 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th. In AD 1219, a sixth crusade was proclaimed by the Pope. More than 200,000 Christian soldiers, most of them of German extraction, landed on the sea coast of Syria. After devastating the littoral, they started in the direction of Egypt and laid siege to the city of Demeter in the year 1219. Of the 70,000 inhabitants of the city, only 3,000 survived the devastating fury of the Christian army. The crusading army next reached Cairo but was defeated in battle and had perforce to abandon the siege of Demeter. In 1229, the Christian general Frederick effected a treaty of alliance with the Sultan Malik Kamil and began to rule over Jerusalem as the result of a compromise. Henceforth, till the year 1291 AD, Jerusalem remained under the control of the Christians. The Sixth Crusade happened in 1228 to 1229, also known as the Crusade of Frederick II, was a military expedition to recapture Jerusalem and the rest of the Holy Land. It began 7 years after the failure of the Fifth Crusade and involved very little actual fighting. The diplomatic maneuvering of the Holy Roman Emperor and King of Cilicia Frederick II resulted in the Kingdom of Jerusalem regaining some control over Jerusalem for much of the ensuing 15 years as well as over other areas of the Holy Land. The Sixth Crusade, which for many historians was merely the delayed final chapter of the unsuccessful Fifth Crusade, finally saw the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II arrive with his army in the Holy Land as he had long vowed to do. Jerusalem had been out of Christian hands since 1187 CE, but was finally won back from Muslim control thanks to Frederick's skills at diplomacy rather than any actual fighting. In February 1229 CE, a treaty was agreed with the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, Al-Kamil, to hand over the holy city to Christian rule. Thus, the Sixth Crusade managed to achieve a peaceful means what four bloody previous crusades had failed to do. Next one, the Seventh Crusade. In the year 1239, a new war was declared by Pope Gregory IX. The Sultan Kamil had died that year and the Christians, in violation of the treaty concluded with him, again advanced in the direction of Palestine. Kamil's children defeated the Christian army and made preparation to attack Jerusalem. Frightened by these attempts, the Christians entered into alliance with the Sultan of Egypt and thus succeeded in keeping Jerusalem safe. The crusade was conducted in response to setbacks in the kingdom of Jerusalem, beginning with the loss of the holy city in 1244, and was preached by Innocent IV in conjunction with a crusade against Emperor Frederick II. Baltic rebellions and Mongol incursions. After initial success, the crusade ended in defeat, with most of the army, including the king, captured by the Muslims. After initial success, the crusade ended in defeat, with most of the army, including the king, captured by the Muslims. Christian army mostly destroyed or captured. After answer and explanation. The Seventh Crusade was an absolute failure for the European Crusaders. Practically, the entire crusading army led by the Frederick King Louis IX did not return from his military excursions. It is believed that about 15,000 crusaders lost their lives during this campaign. Next, Eighth Crusade. In AD 1244, the inhabitants of Khwarizm, being driven away by Genghis Khan, came and occupied Jerusalem. This led to the outbreak of Eighth Crusade. Louis IX, King of France, became excited in AD 1244. The inhabitants of Khwarizm, being driven away by Genghis Khan, came and occupied Jerusalem. This led to the outbreak of the Eighth Crusade. Louis IX, King of France, became excited at the new turn which event were taking an advanced in person against the men of Khwarizm. In AD 1249, he reached Egypt, but next year he was defeated and captured by Turan Shah, Sultan of Egypt, after the Battle of Mansoura. The Crusaders were forced to return to Demeter. The King Louis was released only on condition that he would refrain from further wars in future. After staying for more than 4 years in Syria, Louis returned at last to France. The Eighth Crusade of 1270 CE was like the Seventh Crusade led by the French King Louis IX. As previously, the idea was to attack and defeat the Muslims first in Egypt and then either reconquer or negotiate control of a key Christian sites in the Levant, including Jerusalem. Tunis was decided upon as the first target from where the Crusaders could then attack Egypt. The plan was dealt with the fatal blow of Louis IX's death from illness in August 1270 CE, and the campaign was abandoned before it had even properly begun. Despite the failure of the Seventh Crusade, which ended in the capture of Louis IX of the France by the Mamluks, the king did not lose interest in crusading. He continued to send financial aid and military support to the settlement in Outremer from 1254 to 1266, with the objective of eventually returning the Holy Land. The crusade did not see any significant fighting as Louis died of dysentery shortly after arriving on the shores of Tunisia. The Treaty of Tunis was negotiated between the Crusaders and the Hafsids. No changes in territory occurred, though there were commercial and some political rights granted to the Christians. Next one, the Ninth Crusade. Sultan Ayub Beg died in 1260 and the Mamluks of the army chosen Baibars as his successor. This brave and skillful soldiers drove away the men of Khwarizm from Syria and recovered Damascus and Jerusalem from their hands. Afterwards, he advanced again in order to expel the Christians from the Holy Land of Syria. In consequence of this move on his part of a new crusade commenced in 1267. King Louis of France and Edward, the young Prince of Wales, both assumed the cross in the course of this campaign. In 1268, Antioch fell into the power of Baibars. In 1270, King Louis died and the great Christian fleet was practically completed, destroying on the coast of Sicily. In 1271, Prince Edward advanced against Acre, and for a time gained temporary success against the Mamluks. Next year, Edward concluded a 10 years peace with Berbers and returned to Europe. In 1274, the Pope Gregory X tried to declare a fresh crusade but was unsuccessful in his attempt. Meanwhile, Berbers and his successors continued in their attempts to expel the Christians from the territories of Islam. In 1289, Tripoli was conquered by them and only Acre now remained in the hands of the Christians. But in 1291, even Acre fell under the power of Khalil, one of Babur's successors. Other cities like Tyre and Beirut also acknowledged the supremacy of the Muslims. Gradually, the Christians abandoned all those places which still remained in their occupation. To make to make up for these rivers, it was contemplated from time to time to start other crusading expeditions, but nothing came of such attempts. In Ninth Crusade, it's called Edward's Crusade, sometimes called Ninth Crusade, was a military expedition to the Holy Land under the command of Edward, Duke of Gascony, later king as Edward I, in 1271 to 1272. In practice, an extension of the Eighth Crusade, it was the last of the Crusades to reach the Holy Land before the fall of Acre in 1291 brought an end of the permanent Crusader presence there. The crusade saw Edward clash with the Egyptian Mamluk Sultan Beybers, with both achieving limited victories. The Crusaders were ultimately forced to withdraw since Edward had pressing concerns at home and felt unable to resolve the internal conflicts within the remnant Outremer territories. It also foreshadowed the imminent collapse of the lost remaining Crusader strongholds along the Mediterranean coast. The crusade saw Edward clash with the Egyptian Mamluk Sultan Beybers. With both achieving limited victories, the Crusaders were ultimately forced to withdraw since Edward had pressing concerns at home and felt unable to resolve the internal conflicts within the remnant Outremer territories. So far, we discussed about Crusade War 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have done. Please subscribe our YouTube channel.